So this week's podcast slash video is specifically going back to the basics of security. So I have done multiple courses right now, and the way I see things, security is a combination of technical and business slash the way you live your life, and it can be incorporated into anything that you do. It's not compulsory; it has to be computers, but your base logic can work with anything as long as you understand your base, including some of the technical stuff. So, in this particular one or this particular video, I'm going to be talking about specifically only the technical aspects. Now, in your technical aspects, you need to understand your basics. Like, you really need to understand your basics well. Um, so recently, I was talking to a person who knew networking, who said they knew networking, whereas they did not know. I mean, okay, I wouldn't say they did not know anything, but I was doubting them like a lot. So he was arguing with me, this network engineer was arguing with me that an access point, so the access point, basically what happened, the wireless network had to be changed from WPA to WPA2. He was arguing with me it had to be done over the router. Now, just to give a background of what kind of network it was a multi vendor network wherein the switch was of another vendor, the access point was of another vendor, and the router was of another vendor. Now, ideally, now everything works ideally, like everyone thinks stuff should work ideally, which never happens. Everyone would have, or every business or every device or network would have everyone or every vendor, like the same vendor for the whole network, which ideally I would like, because it makes certain things way more smoother, but practically it doesn't happen that way because there are certain costs and all of that, or sometimes things are upgraded over a period of time. So what happens, sometimes it's just a plug and play situation for certain things, and they buy the cheapest router switch access point out there, and they it gets a job done for them. It's not a problem, it gets the job done. So this guy was arguing with me that the security part of the access point could not be done from the access point and had to be done over the router. I was wondering how that would be possible, and I asked him. He's like, no, all these changes need to be done on the router and I don't have access to it. Now, for a while I thought he did not, like it was a combination of multiple things. One, he did not want to do it, he wanted to put it on someone else or wanted to do it some other day. And the second thing was he had no idea how to use the router. Now, this was a Cisco router, and I would say yes, it's like, it's not like a normal router. You need to configure certain things on the router, but again, the point was, he did not need to touch the router. He needed to change a few things on the access point. He had to basically reset it and all, whatever it was in that particular condition. He had to reset the access point and get it done. The thing was that there were multiple access points, so he had to physically go remove the access point, do a hard reset, get control over it, and then do the changes, which after a lot of back and forth, I got him to do it. But yeah, that's the problem. He first of all did not want to do it. Secondly, he did not know how to use the router, and he did not the Cisco router. And thirdly, I think also that he did not want to understand the network and understand how things work. So yeah, so coming back to the first one, understand your basic concepts well, understand how a device works, understand how an application works, understand how a service works. Service also goes way in depth of the OS, and also understand how these things work. Next thing, for an attack to proceed or for an attack to happen, you need three things at a very top level. You need a port, you need a vulnerable service, and you need an IP. Without these things, an attack cannot be. Now, physical attack, yeah, sure, you cannot, I mean, just say the person owns a device, and if there's a 0 day or something that happens to be of a certain nature wherein certain things may not be involved, then yeah. But in a very generic manner, you need a vulnerable service, you need a port, an open port to that service, and you need a method of communication or who to talk to. That is an IP address, or local IP, or public IP, whatever it is. You need an IP address depending on what kind of a network you are and whatever the infrastructure is. So these three things. Now what people do, they go and block stuff at the network level, at the IP and the port. They'll block it at the network level, whereas the vulnerable service is still running. Now what will happen, the vulnerable service will run on another port or an open port, and you eventually have a problem. So deal with the issue at its root cause. Stop the service by itself. Now Windows has come a long way. Linux by itself you can do it pretty easily. Even Windows, in the Windows server, you can stop the services that are not required, and same with Windows 10. Now I'm not that familiar with Windows 7 and Windows 8. Like, I have used it but not that much. In fact, I'd say I've used Windows 7 more than I've used Windows 8, but still I'm not that confident in it. But yeah, Windows 10, you can stop the services from running, or whatever services you want. Just make sure you understand your system. Like, if a system is not going to use fax, disable the service. If a system is not going to use the print service, disable it. Now you might, like, basically, it's a very, now this method of which I'm going to say is a very hacky method, or what. Don't tell the user you're disabling it. Understand the user first, understand what services he or she requires, and then disable it. If after 30 days or 60 days or 90 days he doesn't come and say that there's a problem, he never required it in the first place. That's how I see it works. But make sure you understand the user and what the user does. Okay, then go ahead and do things, and make sure you can revert back to it within a few seconds, minutes, whatever, but revert back to it fast. So architecture, your setup, your tools in such a way that it is possible to recover. The next thing, don't ever rely on one tool. And what happens is, okay, from an offensive point of view, right now many people rely on multiple tools. I mean, they know multiple tools, but at its very core, those multiple tools are using one specific tool by itself. Okay, now Wireshark, I'm just taking an example. Okay, Wireshark will use WinPCAP or NPCAP at its very core to capture packets. Now same another application could also be using, or majority of the times it's using WinPCAP, or if it's on Windows, or NPCAP on Linux to capture packets. But still they'll say it as two different tools. At its core it's the same tool. Yeah, sure, I'm not saying don't learn it, but understand the tool, how it works. Another method what you could do is maybe put a physical hardware sniffer in between to capture packets. Don't ever rely on one tool. Understand the tool, how it works, and then go about with it. Because sometimes, I would say many of the times, what's happening is people are using the same tools over and over again, and it does the same job. People think it's two different tools, but at its core it's the same tool. It's the same core tool, or the same core library that is being used. They may process it differently, but still, you understand your tools. Don't rely on one. Next part, segment your network, segment your application, segment your service. Now there might be times it might not be possible, but that's on the business side of things. But as much as possible, segment it out. Your purchase order system does not need to be in the same network as your customers are on your Wi-Fi in your office. Just saying, it's not required. Put them on two different VLANs. In fact, I'd say put them on two different networks. Now, depending on how big the organization is and whatever the infrastructure. But yeah, don't put them on two same networks. Now, some people will say, yeah, first, easy access and all. There are ways you can make this easily accessible. Yeah, sure, there's a little bit more it can be a little bit more hectic, but still, it'll save the company a hell lot more money for that little. In fact, I would say, if it's something that's been done on a daily basis, there are ways, and you can switch VLANs in Cisco. At least what I know, you can switch an IP from one VLAN to another. You just need to know how to do it. You can do it by a simple script. It is scriptable. Like, you just run a Python script and it'll switch you to another VLAN. But my point is, don't, for the sake of convenience, do it. I mean, now don't even go too extreme where it's extremely inconvenient, because availability is also a part of your, CIA triad. But understand it. You go extreme on any side. If it's too easy to access, it's too easy for the, too easy to access. It's too easy for the attacker to access. If it's too hard to use, it's too easy for the people maintaining it to do their job. So you need to maintain a balance. So give the minimum amount of utility, security, policies, or whatever is required for getting the job done. Don't give more, don't give less. And I'm stressing on the fact that I'm saying don't give less. So understand that. The same thing with an application. If you're using a WordPress application, don't have your WordPress application on the same server as all your other applications. Put it on two different servers. Now sometimes it might not be possible for an organization to do that. That's wherein again you need to make a decision. But yeah, even in WordPress doesn't use the whole server. It uses certain libraries, it uses certain functions, whatever it is. Segment it out. Have all your backend on one server and have your database on another server. So in case one server is compromised, and have a middleware in between, so everything doesn't go to hell. You can stop an attack from happening. The next one is the 3 A's: authentication, authorization, and accountability. Make sure you authenticate your users, then you authorize them, and then have accountability towards them. Now this is the ideal situation. Practically what happens, every authenticated user is also an authorized user, and there's no accountability. So basically an employee is an employee for life in that organization. The IT department may not disable his email when he leaves the organization for a good amount of time. So there are ways and methods you can use for authentication and authorization and accountability, which I'm going to go in detail later. But yeah, but make sure you understand these three. Make sure you authenticate the user, and authorize it. The marketing department does not need access to PowerShell. Don't give them that access. Revoke that access completely. Same, an IT department doesn't need access to a marketing department's data, like all the databases they have on people, all of that. Don't give them access. I mean, again, there's certain pros and cons and whatever, but it's just an example. And make sure whoever accesses it, they are accountable to it. Now, accountable, I'm not saying oh yeah, you sign a logbook or something. Have it digitally done, because if you have a logbook, that means you have a security guard or someone who can be talked out of this. So when I'm talking out of it, this is now comes to the little business and personal aspect of security. Basically, social engineering. So recently I was talking to an automation guy, and this guy works with pretty big companies and celebrities and all of that. I met him at 11 o'clock in the morning. By evening, we were buddies. He gave me a VA report of a particular network which I wanted for free. Also, he gave me the username and passwords to all his bloody clients. I mean, majority of his clients. I wouldn't say all, but majority of his clients. And I could just walk in and it's not that easy that you just log in and you get access. You need certain tools specifically, which I had because I was also a part of that network and managing that network. But yeah, I could just walk into any network of his clients and I would have access to their routers, their switches, their whole automation system. My point was, there was no accountability. I was not authorized, I was not authenticated, and I was actually authorized and authenticated because I'm using someone else's password, but I was not properly. But yeah, my point was, don't rely on humans. Humans cannot get the job done. They can be manipulated. The worst part is eventually people will get involved, but try and avoid it as much as possible. It saves you a lot of legal headache also. down the line if you ever go to court. And the last thing, I'm planning on having a session or a course on this particular thing. I'm planning to keep it free, so don't worry. But stay tuned. Check me out on Instagram. I'm going to be putting all the updates on that. So meet you guys next time.